Do you know what? We cannot talk about 2025 without reflecting on what has happened regarding Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, for goodness sake, the reverberations are just continuing. It's really quite astonishing stuff. Let me see if I've got some images that I can pull up here. And because obviously, what has happened throughout 2025 is Epstein has continued to haunt them, either from the grave or from his beachside hut in Tel Aviv, whichever you want to think about what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. We were told the official narrative, of course, was that he died in his prison cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York on August the 10th, 2019. Nobody with any intelligence believes that he killed himself, but the 2025 saga of Epstein and those who wanted him and his memories dead and buried has continued. The whole year has pretty much been full of it, really. And what you have is this kind of explosion of the uber wealthy men and women who went to his home and his island and how compromised they were. And you had Trump doing his darndest for the so-called Epstein files not to be released. You had Peter Mandelson, who had to be let go from his role as American ambassador because of his former close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. You had Prince Andrew, who's downgraded. He can't even be called you can't even be called Prince anymore. He's now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and they are moving him out of Royal Lodge to a very nice place in Norfolk. He'll still be living a life of luxury, but he's been so tainted. And the release of Epstein related documents this week confirm what I have been saying forever. Teen girls were part of the gatekeeping operation to make us believe children were not involved. They were. Children were involved. Has anybody seen this video? This video was part of the tranche of stuff that has been released, and I've lifted up the volume and I've put a caption to it. This is Jeffrey Epstein on his flight, and that's a child's voice. Have a listen. Oh, is it not? Oh, where did it go? I will find it. And I'll find it at some stage. You know, these files tell us how degenerate these people are. What I was looking for and what wouldn't play on StreamYard was Jeffrey Epstein on his flight, and you can hear a child's voice saying, "Where are you taking us?" That's what you can hear. And it is absolutely evident and clear that what people like me have been saying forever is the truth, is that this was an international operation where people were not only blackmailed. Look, that is a child's foot. That's like a baby's. That's probably a 6-year-old's foot. This is what they've been hiding from us. And this is what is now coming out, whether they want us to see it or not. That's a reality. So after nearly a whole year of procrastinating, what you had, Trump was forced to sign the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And this weekend was at the end of last week, this weekend, you had they had a legal deadline where the Department of Justice had to release the initial tranche of hundreds of thousands of documents. There is material included never before, which includes unreleased photos of high-profile figures such as Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Michael Jackson, Mick Jagger, Donald Trump. And just to be very clear, just because he's pictured with people doesn't automatically mean that they are responsible for criminal activity. But nonetheless, why was Trump so keen not to put all of this out? And the problem is that they've put this stuff out, but it's heavily redacted, over 550 pages, fully blacked out, many photos obscured, including pictures of like Virginia Giuffre. It doesn't make any sense. There's been disappearing content less than 24 hours after the release. At least 16 files disappeared from the Department of Justice's public website, including photos of Donald Trump alongside Epstein, Melania Trump, and Ghislaine Maxwell. There are people who are saying that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, needs to be imprisoned. That she is. There are allegations that she is doctoring stuff on behalf of her boss, Donald Trump. And it's interesting. Yes. Massey, or is it Massey? Macy, Thomas Macy, isn't it, is going after Pam Bondi. Yes, indeed he is. Yes, exactly, Eric. Picture found of small dentist-like chair, child size with straps for tying. I mean, just horrible, horrible stuff. And Carol said Trump held it back to get people noticing and screaming for it to be released. Carol, are you of the mind that Trump was doing this as some sort of strategy? Because I'm of the mind that Trump is part of the problem. I have to tell you here and now, I do not trust him at all. He had a very long and enduring relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, they broke it off before Epstein died, quite a long while before Epstein died, but nonetheless, they had a long relationship. And one of those images is a drawer full of images of Trump. And that's now been taken off the DOJ website. Now, I heard the Deputy Attorney General saying that some survivors have come forward and said, we don't want our images released. And it could well be that that's part of it. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at all, because Trump wanted us to believe that there was nothing to be had. In fact, do we remember when Trump had a go at a reporter? I remember that very clearly. And that really started to show people up for who they are. And do we remember? So what the Trump administration did was they put out what they called phase one, and they had all these kind of bought and paid for American influencers like libs of TikTok, etc. And they went along to the White House. They were given this folder with stuff that was already available online. Absolutely ridiculous. But Trump did not want this to come out. I don't believe for a second that he held it back in order to be able to raise awareness of it. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. Not at all. Because he was awful with that reporter. He said, are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. And then Trump wanted to talk about different things. He wanted to talk about Texas. He wanted to talk about, and he said, and people still talking about this guy, this creep, that is unbelievable. And then when the reporter wanted to talk to Pam Bondi, Trump was really aggressive and said to Pam Bondi, do you really want to waste your time? Do you feel like answering? Trump is not on the side of victims here. Nobody can convince me that. Absolutely not. Trump has been protecting the people who have contributed to making him president for a second term, if anything. And Trump put my back up then, put back some millions of people, the arrogance, the lack of care for victims and survivors. And he sounded like he absolutely wanted to move on from that subject, because somehow it's a subject he needs to move on from. And now we're starting to see why. And then, of course, you had that situation where he had the falling out with his bromance boyfriend, Elon Musk. And Elon Musk tweeted on the 6th of June this year, time to drop the really big bomb. At real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. And Elon Musk backtracked to a certain degree, saying that I regret some of my posts about President Donald Trump last week. They went too far, but he didn't say which ones. And then, of course, what we've had is the Oversight Committee releasing information throughout the year, releasing pictures. But what's been released this last weekend has been the biggest amount of all. And look here, not there. That's right. And I don't need Elon Musk to tell me what is right or wrong here. Trump's team judged public mood badly. See, what they did was the big problem for Trump and his administration, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, all of them, is they relied on social media to get Trump in for a second term. They made all manner of claims that appealed to their base, including, we're going to reveal the truth about Epstein. And then they shat all over their base. That is the reality. And so much has happened on Trump's watch. Epstein died in prison while Trump was president. The Department of Justice closed Epstein's case while Trump is president. Ghislaine Maxwell is moved to a much more comfortable environment after having a meeting with the Deputy Attorney General. And all of this is very interesting. This is a story of wealth, fame, privilege, of industrial scale of abuse of children and teenage girls, of a cover-up lasting decades and at the highest level of society and continuing right up until this very week. It's a sorry story of international conspiracy, and it matters. It really matters. It's not a distraction. There are survivors who have not received justice. And I am sick and tired of people like Kash Patel, who permanently looks as if he's about to be shot. Like that, right? Awful. Beware of Elons. Absolutely, boob. Absolutely indeed. And Essa said, like the pandemic, this will not go away. Indeed, indeed. And they're all culpable. We know they are all culpable, right? It doesn't matter which side of the political aisle they're on. For goodness sake, in Epstein's house, he had a picture of Bill Clinton in a blue dress, which he'd had commissioned, right? Loads of images of Epstein with whomever, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Richard Branson, Stephen Hawking, you name it. We never know the real truth. I don't know about that, but I mean, I believe that we do know the truth. In us, we know the truth. Our gut knows the truth. But anyway, the whole thing is an absolute shite show. I mean, the fact that Kash Patel actually said under oath, right? He's the FBI director, and he actually said under oath, there's no credible information that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked minors. Well, now we found out that 40 minors gave sworn testimonies that they had been trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. The cover-up is out in the open. They can't keep a lid on it anymore. That is the reality. And Epstein didn't acquire these children on his own or for his own self. And so even though we are told he is dead, supposedly, there is still room for charging to take place. That is the reality. People are complicit in this. And remember that ridiculous video that Pam Bondi in the Department of Justice issued of the prison video. Do you remember that? Ended up with more questions than answers. In it, we saw Epstein being escorted to his cell around 7:49 p.m. on August the 9th, when he and then the remainder of the night, the only recorded activity near his cell was a guard seen walking toward it around 10:39 p.m., followed by another appearance of a camera at 10:41 p.m. But there was a missing minute on the video, and people are wise to these things now. So they released that video with a missing minute and expected us to suck it up. That's what they expected us to do. Outrageous stuff. And, you know, the FBI, Department of Justice, all of it, terrible stuff. And there's been so many problems, obviously, around the so-called death of Jeffrey Epstein, including the missing minutes of the video. Guards on duty were later charged with multiple counts of recording of falsification. There were numerous issues with the camera apparently not working, although they managed to make it work for the videos they released, right? Deep bloody swamp. And of course, Epstein was very selective with his friendships. He liked people in high places and very ambitious, which is also why he linked up with Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of a spy, fraud and media boss, Robert Maxwell. And Ghislaine Maxwell met Epstein. Her father, Robert, was friends with Epstein. And she brought contacts into Epstein's life, including Prince Andrew, very famously. And I mean, Andrew cannot survive any of this, and keep a place in public life. He simply can't. Very famous picture where they were walking in Central Park in December 2010. And, you know, Andrew has lied persistently throughout all of this. But the reality is Epstein, it seemed, could command friendships with royals and politicians alike. And that included Peter Mandelson, who sought to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein as best as he humanly could, had become the US ambassador. We have to look back now and wonder why Peter Mandelson was given the role of US ambassador. And I think it was to do with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and because Trump had to approve it. I think they all thought they could keep a lid on this one. That's the problem. We are in this together. Absolutely. Mr. Windsor, I presume. Right. So, yeah, so the reverberations have been felt throughout the whole year. And Peter Mandelson has not escaped this at all. Neither of any of the people who went to Epstein Island. We're still learning more about it. But it gives me no pleasure to be proven right that when I said they are using teen girls to make us believe that what they've done is lesser than. That's not to say that the abuse of teen girls is lesser than. Not for me, it's not. But in the eyes of the public, it is often considered when you've got teen girls who they were getting $200 a whack from him for doing a massage, right? So in the eyes of the public, it's like, well, those girls knew what they were doing. They were 14, 15. It's a whole lot different when children are involved. Children were involved. And the gatekeeping operation was to make us believe it was teen girls. I kind of glad you couldn't play it, Sonia. I got you. Probably I wasn't meant to. Anyway, we cannot forget the role of all of these people, including those bloody MAGA influencers. Disgusting MAGA influencers. This was a con to keep the MAGA base on side. This whole thing about phase one, it was piecemeal. It was never about reaching an honest conclusion. This took place on February 27th, 2025, when a group of 15 right-wing influencers visited the White House. They emerged with binders labeled the Epstein Files Phase 1 that they had obtained from Attorney General Pam Bondi. And all of the stuff was available online. We all knew it. Including Epstein's address book. Most of it was redacted anyway. Pam Bondi is in trouble. Pam Bondi is in a lot of trouble. And if she carries on covering for her boss, she's going to get in more trouble. Yes, indeed, she is. And JD Vance, oh my God, I think all of them, they've all gone from saying we must get justice for Epstein survivors to doing everything they could to stop this information coming out. And yeah, that includes all of them. So, and we also cannot forget the role of external influence when it came to Jeffrey Epstein, and none more so than Israel. And the case has absolutely been made for Israeli involvement in this and the Mossad. We've heard about it a lot. And there was the link, obviously, with Robert Maxwell and Ghislaine Maxwell. We're at 11:11, people. They will do anything to hold on to power. Yes, indeed, they will. Seen it. You've seen it. Yes, indeed. And so the case for Israel has absolutely been made. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you had a former Israeli prime minister stayed at Epstein's house dozens of times. Epstein also ran a pro-Israel charity. He helped Mossad and CIA connect during the Iran-Contra scandal. He did all manner of things. He had, when his closets were searched, one of the passports he had was an Israeli passport. Yes, Mrs. Skeptical, I'm not necessarily convinced that Trump took part. Trump definitely surrounded himself with young females, no doubt about it. But the problem is that because I think Trump and Epstein were like lads about town. I think that was their gig together. But it's also unsavory. And the problem is Trump is involved because I believe that he delayed the release of this information because he was attempting to protect people who funded his campaign, including people from the Israeli lobby, which is where we're up to now. And so I think that's really what's happened. There has long been evidence of Epstein's connection to Israel. Absolutely, there has. And there's also the issue of Epstein installing concealed cameras in numerous places on his properties to allegedly record sexual activity with, who knows, underage girls, children, prominent people for criminal purposes such as blackmail. It wouldn't be the first time. It wouldn't be a first time. So the gatekeeping operation was an absolute lie. And, you know, I think the reverberations will continue. But we all know the end. I mean, anybody with their faculties in place knows that Epstein did not kill himself, that Epstein was absolutely an abuser of children, that Epstein did not work alone, that Epstein had clients in terms of who he was involved in procuring young people for the rich and famous, and the price they paid was blackmail. We haven't heard half the story yet. We haven't heard what has gone on at Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. We haven't heard about organs being harvested, about cloning. Epstein was a transhumanist, like a lot of these tech bros. And you know what's crazy about a lot of the information and the imagery that's been released now is that Epstein did not hide his perversions. He flaunted it in front of his friends. They knew, no matter their political affiliations, they knew. Whoever crossed paths with him, whoever was invited into his inner sanctum, it was all around. Imagery and art, perverse imagery and art. They are all degenerates. M doesn't believe that Epstein is dead. And valid. Absolutely valid. And I just kind of miss the version of Trump's administration when they all wanted justice for Epstein victims instead of wanting to cover it all up.